Hello, good morning, and welcome to the webcast. We'll be starting 2 minutes after to allow more people to attend, so stay tuned. Thanks to you who have joined. We'll be starting at 2 minutes after. Thank you for standing by. We'll be starting in about a half a minute. Good day, and welcome to this webcast, where we'll be focusing on making sure you don't let your data get locked into a cloud. My name's Sarah Talbot. I'm with NetApp, and I'm happy to be your host this morning. We have a number of presenters who will be joining the call, and so let me now first go over the agenda that we've prepared for you. So I'll start by talking about the hybrid cloud market and what we see customers doing and how this is evolving. Following that, Jim Steinbauer from Equinix will talk about the value of cloud-connected co-location. After Jim, Richard Hardy from NetApp will be talking about controlling your company data in the cloud. And then Lisa Nakas is going to take it over and talk about use cases and customer successes. I'll close out with a brief summary and we'll send you on your day. So the cloud market has been evolving for a number of years now, and we've all learned so much. And what we're seeing is that customers indeed want to use a hybrid cloud model. Most all enterprise customers want to take advantage of public cloud for many of its benefits, but they also see a need to maintain some of the more traditional IT models that they have in place. So IDC predicts that by the end of this calendar year, 80% of enterprises will have committed to hybrid cloud architectures. By 2020, it's predicted that more than 50% of customers will have already shifted the majority of their workloads either into a cloud or into a co-location model. And 78% of enterprises consider managing data across multiple clouds critical. And so what we're experiencing and hearing directly from our customers and partners is that as they move towards digitally transforming their companies, they need to find hybrid cloud models that allow them to take advantage of all the technology possible. Now, IDC has done an interesting survey for the last few years. They have surveyed a set of AWS customers. And in the most recent version of that survey, 83% of the customers surveyed said they had already moved a workload out of AWS. That means that they had attempted or used AWS for a specific workload, and then for some reason they needed to shift it back out. 56% of the customers already use an additional public cloud provider on top of their relationship with AWS. So this data is showing us that multi-cloud is becoming prevalent among enterprise customers, that they're not accepting just a single cloud model. And some more detail from this study, the reasons the survey users said they use multi-cloud is the number one reason is they're looking for the most economical cloud provider. And the business models and pricing models are changing all the time. And two, they want to avoid vendor lock-in. As you all know, in our IT world, we've never really accepted a single vendor strategy. It's just too risky from a procurement perspective. And it seems to be showing out and proving out also in the cloud market as well. So at NetApp, we believe strongly in customer choice. We have a vision of a data fabric where we want to provide you the technology and the tools that allow you to manage your data across all of the cloud options, whether it's private cloud on-premise, actually in the cloud. Our ONTAP operating system is available inside of AWS and Azure, or in a hybrid cloud model using cloud-connected co-location. Now this is where we're going to be focusing for the rest of this webcast, is talking about hybrid cloud inside of cloud-connected co-location. We have a solution called NetApp Private Storage. You'll often hear us refer to it as NPS. And NPS is a solution we deliver in partnership with Equinix. Jim's going to explain more about what Equinix does and the value they bring to the solution, but let me tell you a bit more about NetApp Private Storage. So NetApp Private Storage is essentially NetApp storage that is placed inside Equinix, which is very close to the cloud providers. It allows you to keep your data and your storage private, but to connect it to the public clouds for the compute resources there. And so you get the best of both worlds with it. You get the public compute benefits of agility and elasticity for compute. At the same time, you get to manage and control your own data. The benefits that customers see from this, number one, they're able to have multi-cloud choice. Because their data is not going into the cloud provider, they keep it separate. They can connect that data to AWS for one data set or one analytics run, and then use another cloud provider for another workload on the same data. Data security and control. I mentioned that you get to control your data and your storage. And in this world with increasing data privacy regulations, such as GDPR coming out of the European Union, this is a real critical issue for enterprise customers. Application performance in this model is extremely high. Because the cloud providers have chosen to use Equinix as a place for connection to their clouds, the latency is extremely low, very low in terms of milliseconds for latency. And then many of the customers that are using this have learned that they can save a lot on their storage costs by taking data out of the cloud, and Lee will talk more about that. So at this point, I'm going to turn this over to our partner, Jim Steinbauer from Equinix, and let him take the story further.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sarah. As Sarah said, my name is Jim Steinbauer, and I'm the Alliance Director from Equinix, who's been working closely with NetApp in developing our partnership and joint solution of NPS. NetApp has asked me to spend a few minutes here talking about the unique role Equinix plays in enabling this solution, but also explain why the term cloud-connected colocation is becoming an important part of customers and partners' dialogue in order for them to be able to truly take advantage of the benefits of hybrid cloud in their production type of environment. So why don't we go ahead and get started. The best way I have found in describing Equinix is by explaining the reason we were originally created as a company and the role we have played in developing the digital economy over the past few years, or actually past few decades. Equinix stands for Equal Internet Exchange, and we were created back in the 90s to be the neutral location for all the networks to be able to physically connect and easily pass traffic between one another. Since the internet is fundamentally a network of networks, our founders understood that without these neutral locations, the network providers would naturally compete with one another and not provide the open environment necessary to support the developing demands of our digital economy and the incredible innovation that we have all witnessed over the past 2 decades. Equinix has grown with the internet and developed into the largest data center provider in the world, with currently over 190 facilities in 44 of the most strategic global markets. As the incredible growth of the internet was happening, it didn't take long for other types of companies to realize that they could dramatically improve the performance and control of their internet-based products and services by locating parts of their infrastructure within Equinix and at the intersection of all these networks that were becoming the internet. Being located only feet away and within the same facility rather than hundreds of miles and many network hops away, started providing a user experience that gave significant performance and control advantages to these companies. It's important to remember that while Equinix is a data center company providing space and power to customers, our unique value we are focused on with NetApp is more about what these customers can do once their data is located within these facilities. If you look at this slide, the idea of connecting a customer's data located in one of these cages to cloud providers that are located just down the aisle via a dedicated high-speed fiber cross-connect, which run in those yellow cables overhead, is really at the heart of what we were talking about. While this seems simple enough, most enterprises in the past have not really needed to know about this concept. But as they start incorporating the flexible advantages of public clouds into their IT platform designs, locating parts of this infrastructure within Equinix and a fiber cross-connect away from these clouds enables a level of performance, security, and control that is becoming strategically important to them. Now let's take a quick look at some of the business verticals that have been leveraging this close proximity and cross-connect concept and building the digital economy. So here are the verticals that make up the Equinix customer base, along with the percentage they contribute to our overall revenue. As we already discussed, network providers are at the center of our strategy, and the content and digital media vertical is made up of those internet-based companies that I spoke about. The financial services vertical is another great example of this cross-connect concept, but they are not connecting just to the networks, but also connecting directly to one another to help make up the low-latency electronic trading ecosystem. Equinix has some of the most financially dense data centers in the world, where microseconds are used for measurement rather than milliseconds. And in many cases, there's actually a bidding war for vacated space in certain facilities, because moving feet closer to a trading partner can help create business advantages that represent millions of dollars. Cloud computing is our fastest growing vertical, since these companies are leveraging our unique network density and global reach to connect to their services to customers around the world. This is a key component of NPS and something we will talk about in more detail in the coming slides. The fifth vertical is a very large category we refer to as enterprise, but it's actually made up of every other company or organization that doesn't fit into one of the other verticals. It's important to know that Equinix only has about 350 salespeople in the entire world. While they do a great job of managing our relationships in these other verticals, we cannot effectively reach the enterprise. The only way we can do this is through strategic partnerships who combine our value with theirs to build a combined solution with far greater value to the customer. NetApp and the way they have constructed the unique value of NPS for their partners and customers is a great example of this. Now let's discuss the value in greater detail. As I mentioned, of course, all the major cloud providers around the world are leveraging the global footprint and network density available within Equinix in order to allow customers to connect to their services. Equinix is doing our part as well to help grow the cloud market, and have so far deployed Equinix Cloud Exchanges in 25 of those 44 strategic global markets with the highest demand for cloud. The smaller blue dots on this map represent the Cloud Exchange markets, and the red dots do not yet have Cloud Exchange deployed. The larger blue dots are indicating the number of markets so far that these cloud providers have chosen to physically connect their customers in, and all of the major network providers via dedicated fiber cross connects. Years ago, as Equinix started to see the cloud providers creating these points of presence, as you might refer to in the network world within our facilities, we started to replicate some of the techniques we use to help accelerate the growth of the internet. For instance, the value of an internet exchange is a way for large network providers to purchase one large port physical connection on this exchange and connect to many different smaller network providers via virtual connections that can be dynamically changed in minutes rather than long installation timeframes. This is exactly what we are doing to help accelerate the cloud market. As an example, a customer can purchase a 10 gig port on the Equinix Cloud Exchange and build virtual connections that can be turned up and turned down within minutes to as many clouds that are connected to that exchange. Many customers might be asking to connect to one cloud for a specific project, but I guarantee you they are using more than one cloud currently and will certainly require multi-cloud access in the future and will benefit from this flexibility the Equinix Cloud Exchange provides. This last slide here is really an attempt to bring everything together and very simply explain how NetApp Private Storage for Cloud and the Cloud Exchange complement one another and are creating new ways customers can take advantage of public cloud built into their existing IT environments today. The reference architecture of NPS allows customers to securely locate or replicate their data on private storage at the edge of all of these clouds to leverage the economic and flexible advantages of utilizing the cloud computing capabilities that Sarah referenced earlier in their production environments. Imagine all the data analytics, compliance, regulatory, disaster recovery, and many other challenges that strategically locating their data at the edge of clouds can help customers with. Richard will talk in more detail about many of the advantages listed here, but Equinix is committed to working with NetApp and their partner and customers to help enable enterprises to build their own strategic presence at the edge of cloud into their future IT platform design and achieving their business goals as they head forward. Thank you very much, and I'd like to go ahead and hand it over to Richard.
Thanks, Jim, and good morning. So my name is Richard Hardy. I'm part of the hybrid cloud architecture team at NetApp. And what I'd like to do now is I'd really just like to take you through some of the principles and some of the capabilities that you can look towards when you look at an MPS-based solution. So firstly, we talked earlier about the importance now to customers of multi-cloud. And I think this is a key foundational element for using MPS, is the idea that you can simultaneously connect to the main clouds that people look for, Microsoft, AWS, IBM, and Google. But you can do that in a way that you can actually interchange data between them simultaneously. Think of it really as the power of, instead of having to copy data multiple times between the clouds, that you can actually now very, very quickly switch your data from one to another. That really brings up some interesting use cases. We've had customers look at this to be able to do cloud-level failover, providing resilience in the event of an outage with one provider. They can fail over their internet services to use a different cloud. We look at it from the point of view being able to leverage unique tool sets. So each of the providers is innovating and working on new capabilities, and different parts of the business may want to take account of those different tool sets at different times. Rather than have to have the data represented multiple times in multiple clouds, there's now an opportunity to have a single master version of the data for the enterprise and be able to make that available to any division in the business who wants access to that data in a way that they can do that without incurring the cost associated. It's also worth just highlighting as well that partnership is really a key to making this whole solution viable. We've talked already about the very strong partnership that NetApp and Equinix are bringing to make the solution work. But it's further enhanced by the relationships that NetApp and Equinix have been building with the public cloud providers themselves. I think over the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen a recognition from the cloud providers that first and foremost, the world was going to be hybrid, which is a blend of cloud and non-cloud resources. And now, we're really starting to hear the rhetoric starting to build around enabling multi-cloud. And I think what you'll see is that this has put us in a very, very strong position where we have the kind of partnerships and relationships with the providers that no one else can bring. To give some examples, last week was AWS reInvent in Las Vegas, and NetApp was highlighted as being a leading or the leading partner in 6 of 6 storage partner categories that AWS has. At Azure, we announced in October that we're actually jointly developing services for the Azure cloud now, which will be co-branded between Microsoft and NetApp. So what does that mean? That means that you can look at the solutions we're delivering as not only being backed by NetApp and Equinix, but being critical to delivery of services in a hybrid cloud world, and something that the public cloud providers are also supporting. So what are the benefits? Well, I think one of the key ones that people look towards first and foremost is improving performance. And we've done studies, we've had this independently validated, but really the model that we're looking at here is when I can place my data next to the cloud, that becomes interesting. When I can leverage something like Equinix's Cloud Exchange, I can put my data next to the cloud with extremely low latency. And what we mean by that is typically latency in the 1 to 5 millisecond range is very, very powerful. Because now what that means is that it's the difference between success and failure for application deployments. Customers are always interested in how can they improve their performance, particularly with applications that are running in the public cloud. Sometimes it's not about improving the size of the instance. It's not about throwing more resources. Sometimes it's about understanding the importance of the network and the latency. And what you'll see here is that we see customers are looking typically to use 10 gigabit connectivity through the Equinix Cloud Exchange. It obviously is going to provide them much, much faster cloud import and export speeds compared to traditional architectures when they're moving data from their on-premises data center. But I think you'll see that when I talked before about data switching, you can really recognize that this is sub 2 seconds to redirect data between the clouds. That's a very, very powerful feature that people can start to look towards now when you look at building new and innovative applications in the cloud. By an example of what a customer's done. So we've actually, Lee will talk some more about some of the detailed architectures, but we've had customers who've actually been able to demonstrate that using MPS from a storage architecture will actually allow them to improve the performance of their applications. The benefits of this low latency connection through from the host all the way through to the storage in Equinix is also coupled with the power of NetApp storage, which often means that applications will run faster and performance will be improved. So another discussion that we have regularly with customers, storage is interesting to customers, but data is critically important. Data is really at the heart of their business, and it's the heart of their customer relationships. And with that obviously brings a need to be the custodian of that data and to manage and maintain the security and the governance and the access of that data. And we really see strong adoption from customers who are looking to protect either sensitive data, whether that's PII or healthcare related, or even protecting their intellectual property. So companies that specialize in software development, tech industries, anything where there's a concern really about the implications long-term of putting my data into the cloud, MPS becomes a really, really strong architectural model because it allows you to combine the benefits of the security of your own private data center and actually being able to keep your data separate, but at the same time blending that with the resources of the public cloud in a way that allows you to combine the best of both worlds. And Sarah already touched on some of these, things like GDPR, but there's many others around the world now where we're starting to see both at a government level and at an industry level a need for really to understand the placement of data and where that data is in relation to the public cloud. MPS becomes a very, very strong architecture because it allows our customers to be able to clearly and definitively tell their business where their data is, which country it's in, where it resides, and it makes it much, much easier for them to manage their audit responsibilities. We talked about performance, we've talked about security, and I think the third real interest for customers right now around cloud, and in particularly managing data, is how do they control cost. So we regularly talk to customers for whom storage costs are a significant spend in their cloud bill. If you think about it, that compute tends to vary. Workloads can be hot one minute, cool the next. You have cyclical nature to the workloads at times of year, peak buying. Data in many cases actually trends and trends upwards. It grows time after time after time. And what that means is that sometimes the costs start to become disproportionate, particularly when we look at the policies that people use in the cloud where they have typically multiple copies of their data. There's very little control in terms of things like backups. And what you end up with is a sprawl and a storage cost that can really start to dominate the overall cloud spend. As a result, what we're seeing with the MPS architecture now is this possibility for for you to combine some of the leading best practices you would have in your own data center to reduce the cost of spend on storage. So storage efficiency, data management controls, the ability to be much more cost-focused. But you can now do this in a way that you can bring those techniques to the cloud and do that by building out really a footprint which you can think of as a cloud data center. You can consolidate and exit the peripheral data centers. You can start to standardize. And this really becomes a foundational architecture for hybrid IT moving forwards. What you'll see is the blend of co-location, where you can put some of the non-cloud items, the bare metal, the more legacy systems, things that cloud applications may need to talk to as systems of record. You can combine those with the public cloud in a way to blend cost management and cost control so that for the first time storage doesn't start to dominate the spend that customers are seeing. So one of the things that we hear regularly when we talk about MPS is a concern over egress charges. And that's naturally typical. The cloud providers, as you'd expect, are very keen for making it zero cost for data to come into the cloud, but it's in their interest to charge for egress because they want to make sure the data is maintained as long as possible in the cloud. And what we find when we talk to customers is that many of them, egress is a fact of doing business. Their applications, the way they're constructed, data is moving both to customers via the internet, but also back to the on-premises facilities as well. And what you'll see is when we actually use MPS as an architecture and we leverage the Equinix Cloud Exchange, it's significantly cheaper for our customers to look at egressing data from the cloud. Taking this a different way, the way we would look at it is when we use an MPS solution, we're focusing many of our workloads around the read traffic because that's ingress and that doesn't cost. We're also going to construct the architecture so that we're going to minimize writes so that only really important data and derivatives are being written out of the cloud. We keep the transient and temporary data local because that's zero cost. But then you can be assured that whatever data we are egressing is a significant fraction of the cost of would cost to do this via the internet. Which leads us to what does this mean from a TCO perspective? Well, we're going to talk through some examples. Lee will take you through those in a moment. But what we've seen as we've started to validate this is that customers are seeing significant savings in the order of millions of dollars, 60 to 70%. And that becomes very important because it really starts to allow IT to bring the level of cost predictability back to the cloud. One of the things we've seen for many of our customers is they love the OpEx nature of the public cloud, but one of the things they struggle with is the predictability of their spend and the predictability of how their costs are going to grow and manage over time. In this particular blended architecture, which is a true hybrid IT platform, what we can now start to do for our customers is help them consolidate their data, reduce the amount of duplication they have, drive storage efficiency, and at the same time it brings them a cost structure to the platform that allows them to improve their profits and certainly move forward with more cloud projects than they could in the past. So now what we'll do is we'll look at some real-world customer examples, and Lee's going to take you through those. Thanks, Lee.
Thanks very much, Richard. That was excellent. This is Lee Sinakis. I'm on our Cloud Business Development team and manage our Equinix relationship for the Americas. I spend much of my time meeting with our mutual customers and sales teams. In this section, we'll highlight the main use cases for NetApp Private Storage and review 3 customer case studies and how they're using NPS today. So we looked at over 250 known customers that use NetApp Private Storage and found these to be the main use cases. There's some common characteristics across those. One I call predictable unpredictability for compute. In other words, customers know that they're going to require extra server capacity periodically. They just don't always know how many servers and for how long a period of time. And the other one Richard hit on was low latency for high-performing applications that require storage and compute to be near each other. And as we heard, most production applications run best under 5 milliseconds. So the key ones, Sarah touched on a multi-cloud strategy that can either be business-driven to provide a company choice of clouds and prevent vendor lock-in, or it can be technology-driven, as Richard mentioned, by specific capabilities like AWS for their development tools, or Microsoft for Office 365, or Google Cloud for artificial intelligence. Dev test is common in that the development data is often lower risk than production data first, and then developers want access to lots of resources on demand. It could be tens to hundreds of CPUs, depending on a company's software development release cycles. And I'll talk about how NetApp IT is doing that. Database workloads like SQL and Oracle are also good because they're chatty applications in that the data flows back and forth. There are reads and writes between storage and compute, so proximity matters. Data analytics is a big one because of the amount of compute resources that are often required to analyze large amounts of data. And they're done on a periodic basis. A good example, we're working with some genomics companies where the current data analysis can go from up to a week doing genomes down to 1 to 2 days using cloud compute resources. And the last one is cloud bursting for high-performance computing. And these are specialized applications like IoT that often use massive data lakes or specialized databases. An example of that, we're working with a couple of auto manufacturers on smart car applications. One of those involves 50 self-driving test vehicles. Can you imagine how much data a self-driving car generates? These 50 generate over 25 terabytes of data per day that require local high-performance processing for real-time analysis. Plus, they collect all that data each month. It typically adds up to over 30 petabytes, which then has to be analyzed, and they burst into the cloud for that analysis. Once they're finished, they purge that data and start over again. So a really good hybrid IT example that combines always-on on-prem infrastructure with cloud bursting on a monthly basis. Let's look at a couple of these. The first one I mentioned, NetApp's Advanced Technology Group. This is part of our IT organization and comprised of 350 to 400 worldwide application developers. They run a software development and rapid experimentation lab out of Research Triangle Park in North Carolina. And their goal was to enable a world-class engineering organization but also protect NetApp intellectual property, because this is our software development environment. And like our challenges, like many enterprise companies, we wanted to control shadow IT, centralize multiple individual AWS accounts across the organization, track our cloud usage, and better manage our hyperscaler costs. So the solution was a VMware-based hybrid cloud across 3 data center tiers. If you look at the diagram on the right, we have an on-prem environment is at NetApp's data center in RTP, North Carolina, running on all-flash storage. We have a second tier running near the cloud with NPS at Equinix in Ashburn, Virginia, also running on all-flash fast. It includes a 10 gig connection to Cloud Exchange with direct connections to both AWS and Azure. And we have a third tier in the cloud with NetApp storage software called ONTAP Cloud that runs in both AWS and Azure using EBS storage. And we get to that with wide area network VPN access to both clouds. So what they did with the NetApp private storage is extend our engineering dome into the Equinix data center, which gives our development team scalability and options for bursting to the cloud for compute resources and development tools. There were some really good benefits for the developers. It provided cloud integration, flexibility, and choice of tools. It also delivered low latency for high performance and bandwidth applications. The testing here for the applications that run over the dotted lines on the outside, over the wide area network, we typically see The low is like 40 millisecond latency to up to 100 milliseconds, depending on the time of day over the WAN. When we run it, the same apps over near the cloud through NPS, it's 1 to 2 milliseconds. So when response time matters, this is a fantastic approach. For NetApp Corporate, we were able to meet compliance guidelines and protect our corporate IP. They're able to control our usage costs by using showback, the different IT departments, so they can manage their costs. And we've automated the policies on which access methods are used based on the end user requirements. The second one is Bright Sky. They're a managed service provider in Canada that provides enterprise-grade cloud services and solutions for medium and large enterprises. Their goal was to provide a flexible, cost-effective, and secure enterprise cloud services and simplify their customers' move to the cloud. So think of this example as how your company, your IT department, can begin to act as a service provider also. Their challenges for the business, they wanted to help their customers use cloud resources but still meet Canadian data privacy laws. From a technology perspective, the amount of data they're managing and being asked to back up was astronomical. So they had to design a new platform that would cost-effectively support long-term data retention cycles across multiple sites. So they used a two-prong approach. NetApp Private Storage at Equinix's cloud-connected data center in Toronto for running production-level applications. It's attached to Cloud Exchange with dedicated connections to both AWS and Azure. And they're using NetApp Storage Grid Web Scale, an S3-compatible object-based infrastructure for their data archiving solution. And the benefits this gave their customers choice of cloud and still met Canadian compliance regulations. They have a platform now that supports long-term data retention cycles at a very good cost point, and it allows Bright Sky to deliver custom solutions and let customers manage the data their way. We'll actually hear more from Bright Sky on our next webcast in January. And the last one I want to talk about, it's pretty neat, is a U.S. federal law enforcement agency. This group is actually part of the Department of Justice. They've got 7,500 employees and 280 offices across the U.S. Many of their activities are carried out in conjunction with task forces made up of state and local law enforcement officers. Their goal was to provide law enforcement professionals from multiple organizations across the country rapid access to all of the agency's criminal and evidence data to help protect the public from violent crime. So here are challenges. Well, they had to store, use, and share over 800 terabytes of data annually. And they still have to maintain legal chain of custody for all the data in their possession. So obviously putting that in the public cloud was not an option. They had limited capital budget available. Sound familiar? And coupled with a mandate to close one of its data centers. So they were looking to consume all of the IT infrastructure as a service. And last, the new environment had to meet strict FedRAMP requirements. So the agency turned to 1901 Group, a trusted provider of IT services, to develop and execute their hybrid cloud strategy. They delivered a groundbreaking hybrid cloud solution with all the infrastructure components, storage, servers, monitoring, management, maintenance, billed as a monthly OpEx service. The agency now stores its data in dedicated, FedRAMP authorized private cloud space at Equinix and consumes infrastructure for both production and NDR on a per terabyte basis. Here's an example of how they use this. A domestic terror incident requires that the agency collect and share massive amounts of data between multiple federal and state agencies, right? Just think about what's happened recently and how that works. They can now stand up almost instantaneously a public-facing website that can ingest any multimedia data in any form and run that data through a set of photo or video algorithms to find key information and identify suspects. That speed gives law enforcement officials timely access to information they need to help find criminals and fight crime. Seconds matter in a terror attack, and that's one of the reasons they're using this solution. So the benefits, the solution aligned with the department's cloud-first strategy and allowed them to close down a data center. They still have full control of their data to meet FedRAMP compliance requirements and are able to document chain of custody for all evidence data. They turned CapEx from IT into an operating expense to meet their budget requirements. And last, they provide the agency freedom from cloud vendor lock-in and the ability to move data and workloads between clouds. We'll actually hear more about this very cool use case from 1901 leadership team next month as well. And I'd like to transition this back to my colleague Sarah for summary and wrap-up. We will also take questions at the end of the webcast. If you have any you'd like to put on the chat, please put them up there as well. Take it back, Sarah.
Thank you, Lee. So I hope you've enjoyed the webcast so far. There's been an awful lot of information. And so next steps, I'm going to put this out, and then if we have the time, we'll take care of some questions. If we can't get the questions done on live, we'll post the answers to questions in the feedback to the audience section. So what's the next steps? Well, you can learn more about this solution. We have a team of architects working under Richard Hardy who can help you understand more about how to make this work in your environment with a whiteboard session, or visit us at netapp.com. You can try this out. You can sign up for a trial or a proof of concept. We're happy to help with that. And in terms of implementing this, you can either buy the pieces and parts yourself and assemble it inside Equinix and own it all, or you can work with one of our many partners who bundle this together as a solution, such as the partner Lee mentioned, 1901 Group, and there are more. So some of the partners that we feature as experts on this topic: DataLink, Synoptech, Faction, Foresight, Bright Sky, and Arrow. They all have a little bit of a difference in how their offering works, but each of them can implement this fully inside Equinix. And lastly, I would like to talk about the upcoming webinars and live events we have coming in Q1. So on January 11th, we'll have a follow-on webinar talking about data sovereignty, security, privacy. We'll have Bright Sky, who is a partner from Canada and is an expert on data sovereignty issues there. And also we'll talk about the use case that Lee just talked about of the federal agency and how that solution is taking care of their data privacy needs. We'll follow that on February 13 with a webcast on DevOps. And then we're doing a series of physical events in the cities that are listed there, and hope you can join us. And so with that, I'd like to thank you for attending and check the audience announcement for the answers to any questions. Thank you so much.
Hey, Sarah, there are a couple